Hello, we're here today to talk about sales and distribution workshop. My name is Jim Parcell. My background is in supply chain efficiencies, sales, customer service, and process improvement and change. Sales objectives today: top sales skills, sales funnel versus the sales pipeline stages, sales process, planning, pricing strategies and models, sales and distribution cycle, sales channels and distribution management, and implementing process change. Top sales skills. There's a lot of skills out there that we look at when we think about team members, whether it's in ourselves, whether it's who we're hiring. But when we think about sales, here's 14 of them. So product knowledge, business acumen, so really understanding the business, having a strategic prospecting background or energy, empathy, effective communication, negotiation skills. We also think sales so much is just selling, but really it's an added aspect of customer service. We want to make sure there's a willingness to learn both in ourselves and those we hire, confidence, resilience. So sometimes you almost have to have bulletproof skin. So when we look at adding people to our sales teams or even to ourselves, how do we make sure that those people are able to take a lot of no's and very few yeses and still have that resilience and energy and positive movement forward? Emotional intelligence. So it's not just understanding the energy of somebody, but how do we take that and on the spot and react? Active listening. So in sales, we talk so much, but really it's also about listening. So we want to make sure we're driving as much information out of the consumer, out of the buyers, out of that relationship so that we really empower ourselves with knowledge so that we're able to build that sale. Relationship building and rapport, as well as the entrepreneurial spirit. And if we don't have these skills either in ourselves or in the people that we're looking at, don't worry, we can build and develop these skills. There's a lot of avenues out there, but we really want to make sure that if we are looking at adding people to our team, do they have a willingness to learn? Do they have confidence? And do they have resilience? That's really where you want to start. And we can really build the skills for those individuals outside of that. Some aspects and some avenues for that are just subscribing to industry publications, newsletters, and podcasts so that we're really getting that information about the market and our industry on a daily basis. We're learning those buzzwords. We're really letting that sink in. Having success and failure panels. These are non-judgmental. This is very open. This is very conversational. And we really just want to understand the success and failures of different people on the team. What are we doing and what can we share and learn together and grow from? Reviewing the buyer's journey. So much in sales is we're pushing information, but we really want to take 2 steps back, put ourselves into the buyer and the consumer's shoes and really understand what is the need, what is the want, what is that value to them, and understanding the journey they're going through so that we know how we can talk and walk these people through and empower them to make the decision. Always want to make sure we're doing a competitive analysis. We want to make sure that we're able to benchmark ourselves against competitors if we're talking to buyers on the B2B side. So how do we do that? We want to make sure we have data. Another avenue is to write a strategy for overcoming top prospecting barriers and review them. If we're a team upon ourselves, review them with friends. If we have a small sales team or a small company, review them with the team and just get additional feedback from them. And friendly competition never hurts as well. And that brings us into the sales funnel and the stages versus the pipeline stages. So first off, the sales funnel: awareness, discovery, evaluation, intent, purchase, loyalty. This is really the quantity and the conversion of prospects into somebody who is now buying product from us, again, whether a buyer or a consumer. The sales pipeline stages, again, prospecting, lead, qualifying leads, initial meetings, defining prospect needs, making an offer, negotiating, finalizing proposal, closing the deal, and delivering the product, as well as retention. This is really the stages that the salesperson actually is going through, that physical process. As far as the sales funnel, you can make this as complicated and simple as you want. One way to simplify it is just it's awareness, it's consideration, it's decision. This is what, we reach out to 100 people. How are they getting narrowed down into that final buyer? We want to make sure that we're understanding, again, what the customers are going through before the purchase and after the purchase. That information empowers us when we do additional sales in our lifetime. We want to know where the leads are in the sales pipeline, both if we're talking internally so that our coworkers and counterparts know how long it might be before a deal closes. It also will help us understand, different pain points, different roadblocks, and potholes that might be in that road so that we're able to close deals in the future from these learnings. And again, that brings us to again, understanding that consumer's behavior, and how do we use that consumer's behavior from the past to help those future sales. So in that sales process, we're taking the pipeline now and we're kind of narrowing it down to 7 steps. Again, you can have as many or as few as you want, but we're really looking at prospecting, preparation, approach, presentation, handling objectives, closing, and finally the follow-up. So prospecting, this is who's our target consumer, who's the target customer, who are the decision makers. So it's both, B2B or, direct to consumer. So who do we really need to be reaching out to? We have a limited amount of time, limited amount of energy. So we want to make sure we're reaching out to as many of the right groups of people as possible. And we want to make sure we're partnering with marketing and customer service to make sure the feedback that they have as far as the market is this, the ideal consumer or business is this, helps us make sure that we're not spending our time in the wrong areas. We want to make sure that we're qualifying these leads too. So do they actually need the product or service that we're offering? And can they actually afford it too? So it's great to have the most perfect product out there. You can have a Maserati, but not everybody can afford a Maserati. So don't bother trying to sell it to everyone that's out there. Some options to help you. So we have Google, LinkedIn. So you can look for certain job titles in LinkedIn. You can look for news in Google for the different industries that might be affected by products that you can sell. Hunter.io, there's a lot of different softwares out there like this, but there is some free options. So a lot of time we might know the name of somebody at a certain company, but because we haven't met these individuals yet, we don't know their email. There are softwares websites like Hunter.io that will help you break down that the most likely format for that email address is going to be first name, last name at company, or first initial, last name, etc. Doesn't always work, but I've had some really good successes using that. Networking events also really good. I know in the COVID universe, we have far fewer of them, but still making sure that we can do virtual ones. Also taking part in business and professional associations, alumni associations from universities, as well as Chamber of Commerce. And don't forget to be pulling keywords from marketing, customer service, and using those when we're trying to look for those prospects who we're going to be emailing, cold calling, etc. So preparation. We really want to make sure that we understand our product and our market. So we want to be subject matter experts. We want to understand what the need is, both from the consumer and the buyer side. What is really important to those contacts so that we're making sure to address those in advance. We're preparing before we meet these people or before we're able to land that big phone call where we can have more than a few minutes of their time. We want to define our objectives for that meeting. So it may sound silly, but in order for us to really have a really good plan, a really good presentation, we want to be able to react on the spot. So what are the different objectives? What are different victory points? And where do we need to do some minor tweaks in the moment when we're in face-to-face or over the phone? What is the valid business reason for the meeting? Why really getting together? What's the value to them and for us? What is the best commitment and minimum commitment? So again, it might sound kind of silly when we think about that so far in advance, but again, it helps us to be able to have that spur of the moment change in our sales pitch versus all of a sudden the moment. So best commitment, you're going to buy. But again, if you're just learning these people, just meeting these people, it's like, I want to understand your needs. I want to understand more. I want to grow. So much of selling is getting no's, but even those no's, it might take 5 different really good conversations, phone or in person, in order to close a sale. So it's what's that minimum commitment that we're going to get out of it? It's the next meeting. It's for them to, give us information about really what's of value to them, how their network works, etc. And we want to map those talking points out and possible objections in advance as much as possible. Again, that empowers us for being on the spot and already being able to respond to something versus, your competitor does this, what about you? And you're like, oh, well, I didn't know my competitor did this. You want to make sure you're getting subject matter expert. We've mapped out these objections ahead of time as best we can. We use those team meetings where we can bounce ideas off each other to have as much visibility into our sales as possible. approach. This now we're finally in person slash, over a Zoom call phone. And normally we want to start with a confirmation. So is this still a good time to talk? Are you still interested in improving efficiencies? Are you still interested in X, Y, and Z? We want to work to capture the buyer's attentions, with questions, with statements, or a minor demonstration. Anything to kind of, again, stimulate that interest right in the beginning, and then slowly transition into our presentation. In presentations, whether verbal or visual, we've got PowerPoints, we've got one-pagers using marketing material from the marketing department. We really want to open by positioning ourselves as the subject matter expert, and we're the ones that are going to be asking questions, but in a way that's psychologically, not that we're attacking these people, but we're really trying to feed and get information out of them, like almost, a friendly therapy session of business and what really matters and means to you. Investigating, so asking open-ended questions to really understand those concerns. So do you value low price? Yes. Okay, that's great. But we want to make sure that we're asking those open-ended questions. So like, what about value is important to you? What about price? What aspects and features are important to you as far as the companies and the services that you partner with? What are the actual values again? So what really means something to them, and using that information again in the future for future meetings, but taking that and using that during that sales call so you can build off of it. Again, active listening, very, very important in order to understand, and we're trying to absorb as much information from them as we can while we're interacting. And we want to act and react accordingly. One method is golden silence. This is where we go almost to the envelope of awkward silence. But if somebody is, responding to us in an open question kind of way, and we pause and we're very positive, we've got good attentive look back at them, whether it's a Zoom call or, good energy over the phone. And if you just wait a little bit just before you get to like actual awkward silence, you'll normally get somebody to keep talking because they don't want to have that awkward silence. And the more that we can get our buyers to communicate, the more that we can get our buyers to share information, the more that we're empowered for that sale. Demonstrating. So we want to make sure that we have that product knowledge to aid the buyer in making an informed decision. So it's both our product, it's both the competition, and it's the market in general. We want to have samples, demo, either with us or available to get to them, really focusing on benefits and features, and show how that product is going to be able to meet their needs. So again, we thought ahead of time, what is it that really matters to them? Is it sales velocity? Is it efficiencies, et cetera? So that we were able to right there on the spot show, because so few times we're able to get those really good meetings. So if you're actually in person, in Zoom, or have a 30-minute phone call with somebody, we want to make sure that we're using that time as valuable as possible. Handling objections. So again, in advance, we want to make sure that we've really thought about what possible objections there could potentially be. So is it cost? Is it the competitor does this, et cetera, so that we can actually talk about that meat right when we're, with the buyers and the consumers. What are the objections and concerns? So really drive out to what the objection is. So is it X, Y, and Z, or can you dig in a little bit more to get more information? Never feel defensive for why it is. It's, you don't like the product. Why don't you like the product? What is it? Please educate me. I really want to know. And then break down that concern. Competitive comparisons, again, super, super important. We want to make sure that we really understand the cost, the features, and the benefits of our competitors and how we line up. Our costs may be a little bit higher. And if they are, we want to make sure that we can absolutely explain why that, our quality, our ingredients, X, Y, and Z is better, the efficiency, et cetera. Open-ended questions, always the best way to go. So like, your competitors, are they on time? What's the quality like? How flexible are they? And how is their customer service? So you're trying to set yourself up to how you can have a conversation about a weakness on somebody else and show how that you're going to be able to meet and beat that. Always reviewing the product, demo if you can, samples. One other issue with, objection is just the overall fear of change. So I've always used this one vendor. I've always used this one service. We've always used these certain products. We only have so much shelf space. So that fear of change, how do we alleviate that? How do you start to build that trust? Walking through how your organization works, how your organization responds to last minute orders, how your organization responds to emergencies, et cetera. This is something important to kind of educate, buyers and consumers so they understand why investing in you, as far as, purchase, et cetera, is really, really important and is actually going to make my life easier. Finally, there's closing. So does the buyer like the product or service? How is the pricing? This is good information to bring back. Have all of the questions been successfully answered? And then review those questions, literally review back with your contact. If this is on the B2B side, here are the questions that we have that are open, and I'm going to be able to follow up with you in X number of days and make sure that that's verbally understood and you've written down those questions and that there's nothing else that's left to be answered. And as far as the objections and concerns, have those been resolved as well? Best case scenario is the buyer ready to close, but we really want to get at least one commitment before we leave that meeting, before we leave that phone call. So again, this is our one chance. We've really been able to invest some time with this individual. Time is the most valuable resource. So did they actually complete the order? Are they willing to take a trial? Or are we just going to do a follow-up meeting in the near future where we can actually walk through more? Because again, most sales, 80%, can be 5 or more meetings with an organization in order to get that sale closed. Also, you have the risk of, if it's on the service side, there could be a locked in contract. So for the next 1 year, for the next 2 years, our contract for X, Y, and Z is with X competitor. This is incredible, great information too. Yes, you'll have to wait with this one company in order to do something, but having that information and knowing when that next RFP is going to be, request for proposal. So when are they going to be looking for, more proposals to come in? Really, really important. And to still build that relationship over that period of time so that you really have that rapport and that they know you, they know your company, they know how you're going to respond. Really important to just, build that, even if they're not ready to buy today. What can I do in order to continue to build that relationship so they'll be ready to buy soon? And we also have the information needed in order to compete. Follow up. Whether they buy or not, we always want to make sure, again, time, the most valuable resource. We want to make sure we thank them via email. We want to send them a letter, make sure that we're following up with all open questions with answers. We want to make sure that all promises that were made during that presentation, whether the phone or in person, have been kept, and make sure we're showing appreciation. So again, whether it's a trial or a sale that's going to happen, we want to make sure that we're monitoring the delivery. So even though it's just a trial, it doesn't mean that it arriving late isn't going to impact you. We want to make sure that that trial, that demo, that sample that we're sending them is still treated just like the real win, that we're getting feedback, and that we're also following up with ourselves as customer service and even in the customer service department. How did this go? What is your feedback? And if there's any issues, immediately and quickly resolve. Again, it's always going to be cheaper to keep a customer than acquire a new one. So it's how do we make sure that we just keep everything buttoned up as possible? Now, when we can land those sales meetings, it's a really great opportunity. It's wonderful. When we're sending emails out prospecting, we want to make sure we have templates that, really speak to what we're going for. But if we're able to get somebody that's the right contact on a cold call, and they only have a few seconds, one option is the elevator speech. This is back when, we're bumping into people in the real world. We're striking up conversations. This person actually is a buyer for X, Y, and Z. That is something as an industry, it's an ideal customer for you. It's always good to have an elevator speech ready. And again, this is something great that's over the phone if the people don't have a lot of time. So we're really thinking about 30 seconds. What can we convey in a 30 seconds? Based upon how the average person speaks, we're really looking at 60 to 100 words. And we want to make a template around, introducing ourselves. So we want to start with a question. We want to state the problem and do that in a way that we're creatively setting ourselves up for, and we're the solution. And we want to make sure, again, since there's not a lot of time, we're really highlighting benefits over the features, because the benefits is really what they're going to compare to competition initially in that short period of time. Why people should trust our company, your company, and your product. And we want to anchor that information in as much data as possible. And then what is the value proposition? Make sure we describe that out. And then always ending everything with a call to action. And again, a call to action could just be like, I would love to send you an email. I'd love to set up a phone call, and make sure that you're obtaining that person's information, because so often they're already being inundated by so many potential buyers, so many potential products and services, that, how do I make sure that I'm going to get in contact with you, get their contact information, make sure that you're the one that's dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So overall, our sales planning, some scenarios and tips, we want to make sure that we're always aligning daily, weekly, and monthly activities in order to facilitate future success. So as we look at that sales funnel, that sales pipeline, we realize the top's really wide. We need a lot of people in order to get a few sales at the bottom. So something important for us to know and understand is, what is our overall success rate? So from prospecting to qualifying to closing the deal, let's just assume for the scenario, it's 5%. So the average the average deal results in $400 in profit, and we need $2,000 in profit a week. So that would be five deals a week we need to close. So in order to do that, we're going to have to be reaching out to 100 people at minimum each week. And we need to make sure that we're keeping that funnel filled so that, as we look, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks out, we're going to be having the opportunity and the number of people that can potentially meet to have those deals close. Another good piece of information to have is the time to close, because that's how we're helping planning, distribution, production, operations, and customer service, so that we know we have this many people in this stage of our funnel, and we know on average it's going to take another week, another 2 weeks, another 3 meetings, whatever benchmark that you want to use to measure by, but just to have that to be able to talk. So, again, just assume it's 4 weeks. So again, you're going to have to have 100 prospects that you're reaching out to every week, because so often we're like, okay, I have sales meetings this week. I have sales meetings this week. I have sales meetings this week. That's great. But who is making sure that there's prospects coming in? Is it, marketing helping? Is it customer service? Or if it's a lean, mean company that you're in, it's you. So you just want to make sure that you don't forget to make sure you're putting fuel on the fire to make sure that there's something there, once those deals that you are working on close. We want to make sure, because again, time is very important, that we're focusing on the correct market, the correct target consumer. It's great to find a key contact, it's great to find a contact at a company, but making sure that that's the key influencer, making sure that's actually a decision maker is even more important, because you can spend so much time talking to a great cheerleader, a great champion inside of a company, but is that somebody who can actually carry the baton all the way to fruition? Or do we need to, calibrate, can you help me meet the right person who can make this decision, et cetera? Again, always getting back to putting ourselves in the consumers, the buyers, the B2B's shoes. What's really important to them? What's the actual value? What is the actual want? In sales, a lot of times, especially if it's on maybe a service side or certain products, and efficiency and equipment, one thing to ask a buyer is, what are your metrics? What are your KPIs for the end of the year? You're at a big organization, you're going to be graded at the end of your year. What are those? And how can my product, how can my service, how can my company help you achieve those? It's a really great way to start to build trust and understanding and really aligning yourselves with buyers. And it could also just be like, sales velocity and profitability. So if my product is, this much profitability, but the sales velocity is this is something that's going to, really make you look good within the company because you've made this decision. So again, we want to sell with a purpose, and we always want to think about it from the buyer's perspective. On the sales side, historically speaking, the big mantra has always be selling. So that's great, but what we really kind of want to, always be selling, always be closing. That's great, but we really want to kind of transform that now to always be helping. So we're trying to take it from selling, we're trying to take it from closing, which are always, kind of centered on us, and make it more about how are we going to help and partner with, our buyers, our consumers, so it really is kind of a mutual beneficial thing. And it does help and, smooth the sale process. We talked before about being a good communicator. So we really want to be succinct. So short, sweet, concise. If we're in person, if we're over the phone, one rule would be, the 80-20 rule. So what does that mean in this? We really want to, we may be the ones driving the questions. We may be the ones driving the overall conversation, but we really want to allow our buyers and decision makers to really provide us with that key information. So we really want to focus on talking 20% of the time and really asking those really good open-ended questions, so that 80% of the time we're getting that good information, so that while we're in that sales meeting, either in that particular one or in the next one, we're able to plan based on that information, what's important to them, what are the roadblocks, what areas do we think are slowing them down, so we can take that, use it in order to close the deal that meeting or in future. Another good thing to always know, as far as, with your contacts, again, on the B2B side, what is your preferred method of communication? You can have the greatest relationship with somebody. I've been emailing you for, 2 months. I haven't heard back from you. Oh yeah. I never really check my email. I'm a phone person. Or I'm on the phone all day long. I'm really an email person. So really, when you start to get these contacts, when you start to get, whether the deal's closed or not, you really want to understand what's the best method to communicate with them, so that you're succincting and you're really showing that you're listening to them. We also want to make sure we're evaluating our customers' experience, whether it's on B2B or the individual consumer, and really using that experience. Has it been good? How can we be better, so that we can start get that willingness to recommend and referrals? So pricing strategies. Excuse me. Pricing strategies. So this is really what we look at as far as on the internal side. So this is not what we're sharing with the universe. This is how we talk in-house about how we are going to be successful and what methods we're going to use as far as gaining market share. The different strategies that are out there are penetration, premium, price skimming, bundling, and loss leading. When we look at penetration, this is, we're pricing ourselves lower or below competition. We're really using this to gain market and brand recognition. And over time, we're going to increase price to get in line with our competitors. There's premium. So we're charging more than our competitors. And this is really because the image, the buzzword, some new organic product, there's some prestige, some high quality that gives a reason for this, or the brand. Price skimming, this is where we're charging a high price at the launch. It's the newness, it's the cachet, it's the limited quantity. And then over time, as that cachet or inventory builds up, we lower that price. So I always think of the PlayStation 3 in this example. So, years ago, or excuse me, a year or two ago when it first came out, it was almost like $600. It's very expensive. Now you can get it and it's at a lower price because, it's been out for a while. Bundle pricing, that's where we're packaging 2 or more products. This is really good for that, psychological nudge. So again, thinking of the PlayStation, when you originally went into the store, when it first got launched years ago, you saw it's just the console. It's just that one item sitting there. Now you go into the store and you're seeing it's that item plus 1 or 2 games or controllers or additional items. You're working to help that person have a reason to break down and finally buy. Another good tool with this one is inventory management. So, bundling that popular item. So, the PlayStation, the console, that's what people want. That's what people want. But maybe you're bundling it with, games that aren't selling as well, or some other product that you have that just is not as popular, that's been sitting on the shelves, that's been sucking up working capital, and using that in order to alleviate inventory, get that capital back up and make those sales. The last one, loss leading. This is where we're priced to where we're losing money, but we're really trying to use that to grab customers' attention and brand awareness. One thing to keep in mind is we've also been trained to a point where if something is so low and it has such good buzzwords, we almost don't trust it if the price is too low. It's organic, it's this, or the service is going to do, it's going to save me this much time, it's this much efficiency, the machine's going to make this many of X, Y, and Z. So really what we had to be cognizant of, you don't want to be too high when you price, but you don't want to be so low that you've undermined the brand image and really the value of the product. So it's really a balancing act that you want to think about. And again, this is not an island of your own. Within sales, you work with marketing, we want to work with customer service, we want to work with finance. We work across these boundaries so that we're really getting that information and understanding why we make these decisions and what's really, really important. So pricing models, this is what the consumer sees out there in publications, et cetera. There's subscription, flat rate. So it's a set price for X product or service. There's tiered, so that price is going to change based upon features, add-ons, levels of usage. This can be anything from technology. So there's a lot of, services and Spotify. Dropbox that are out there with subscription services for add-on, but there's also, the Bark Box, and other ones that are, grooming, clothes, beauty products, grooming products that you can get a subscription service for. So don't let that, don't let service or product really kind of throw you off. There's options out there for subscription. Freemium, this is really more so on, a technology side, but the product or the service is free or ad supported. And premium cost is available. Again, this really goes back to apps or potential trials of a physical product. There's bulk pricing, again, more on the B2B and wholesale, but the product or the service purchased, the more that you purchase, the lower the price. There's also market pricing. So the price changes in line with supply and demand. Probably 3 years ago, we'd only think about that if you went out to a fancy restaurant, it would say market price for X. But now we're really looking at, cell phones are in line with this, they're going up. Semiconductors are in super low demand, super low supply, super high demand. And that also, feeds into cars right now. So you look at cars. So cars are selling at MSRP or sometimes even above because of this. So figure out how your product interacts. Do you have fluctuations of, certain ingredients, certain processes in it that really fluctuate violently? You might want to look at the market pricing. There's a sliding scale. This is the price that is set. However, considerations, so the price is X. So it's going to be, $100 for whatever, but there's considerations made based on, individual consumers' ability to pay. And this is really more on a service side, legal, pro bono work, or maybe, willing to charge less because of a certain ethical reason. And that would also include healthcare. So pricing, cost of goods, and margin. Pricing, again, it's a psychological game. You really want to ensure your cost of goods. So, one, it's priced to sell, but is it also priced for the company to be able to sustain itself? And you can sell everything you want in the entire universe, but if it's not priced right, you're not bringing in the right level of return, the company might not survive. Cost of goods or services. This is the amount of money that the company spends in order to get that product or service to the marketplace. It's really, really, really the direct costs of that said service or product. So again, that normally excludes utilities, rent, marketing, sales department costs, et cetera. And margin and profitability, we're really going to vary based upon how we're selling it and who we're selling it to, but we'll get into that. So one scenario here, we'll assume that it costs $2.50 to produce said item, and it retails to the consumer for $5.99. So margin, the formula for your reference, equals revenue minus cost divided by revenue times 100 to get to the percent. Profit is just revenue minus costs, and price is the cost divided by 1 minus margin. So direct to consumer, that's where we have the most ability to gain profit and margin. So, in this example, it's a 58% margin and it made us $3.49. So manufactured to retail. So let's assume that the retailer wants a 35% margin. So they're going to get a $2.10 profit, which means our margin is 35% and our profit's $1.39. And if we add another person into the game, so manufacturer to wholesale distributor to retail. So we're assuming the retailer still wants the same margin and profitability. So the distributor says, I need to have a 20% margin. So the profit for the distributor is going to be 78 cents, which means our margin is going to be 19% and our profit is going to be 61 cents. Really, what's important here is just understanding, the different channels are going to have the different levels of profitability, which is pretty clear. But direct to consumer, what kind of volume do you actually have in there, and what kind of labor and cost are associated with that too, is not necessarily captured in here. So it's very important to understand that, if we just make $3, but we sell to 100,000 people, we're going to make great money. But how much effort is it actually to get those 100,000 sales versus, if we're doing a manufacturer to retailer, what does a sale look like? How easy is it to maintain? If we're a lean, mean machine, those bigger sales are obviously going to cover us more. Some things to think about too, average margins, it's going to vary greatly based on who you partner with and who you're in. But, for fast moving goods, with distributors, it can be anywhere from 3 to 10%. if it's food, it could be up to 20% on the retail side. The average margins they're looking for are anywhere from like 8 to 40%. So it really depends on what your product is. Sales velocities, are important to be able to know. So when we're selling, we're always tracking data. We understand how long it takes to do things. We understand how quickly things sell. How are we empowering, again, decision makers at distributors and retailers to work with us? Because the profitability may be X, but the sales velocity is so high, it makes up for something. So just empower yourself with knowledge. So sales, sales and distribution cycle. So we've talked about how sales might partner with marketing and customer service and finance, but we also partner so much with distribution, and we're really locked in with that universe. So, and distribution is, it's everything from the receipt of the inbound raw materials, the storage, the warehousing of partial finished goods. Sales comes in, they make the order, create a sales order. We're ensuring that there's available inventory. Distribution is ensuring that the right product is picked. It's packaged properly, so it's going to arrive undamaged. There's the right paperwork, the right label, so it's going to go to the right place at the right time. Shipping occurs. If we're using technology and different systems that are out there, we would then do a goods issued at this point to reduce that inventory from our system. Tracking. Not that we're necessarily using or competing directly with Amazon, but in the world that we're in now, we have basically been conditioned to want information and expect information constantly. So we want to make sure that expectations that people may have, we're always trying to meet. So this might be where we provide our consumers, our customers, our B2B buyers with the tracking information and follow up with communication throughout the channel, whether it's through sales or customer service or distribution. The goods are received. We want to make sure that we're getting information. How did that go? At that point, there's the billing and the payment. Of course, this will vary. If we're direct to consumer, obviously we're not billing and paying at this point. We're making sure that that's before we ship. But this, in the B2B world, we're really looking at 30 to 45 day payment terms sometimes. So obviously we're not really billing until the goods are received. Always making sure we're following up, and then having a process prepared for reverse logistics. And it could be something as simple as a return, it could be a damaged item, or it could be something as big as a recall. So sales channel and sales distribution management, again, they align really well, but we look at things differently. So on the sales side, we're really thinking about the sales funnel, the process, and who those individual consumers are that have made it through the funnel. So we have the direct to consumer, we have retail, we have wholesale, we have B2B and broker agent. We also have on the distribution side, which would be, the direct selling. We have the intermediaries. We have that. It's the physical movement. It's the physical good and how it's moving through the cycle. So it's manufacturer to retail to customer. It's manufacturer to wholesaler to retail to customer. Or sometimes you may even add an agent or broker. Agent or broker. Broker might be good if you have slow moving inventory that's sitting in there. You really need that capital back to work on better projects. You could bring in a broker to kind of help you work those sales if the sales department has had issues. Dual distribution, that's where you're using multiple channels, but it can get a little bit tricky because you may be poaching customers from yourself and from partners like retailers, wholesalers, and distribution. So careful on that side. And then again, reverse logistics. So that is when items are coming back into us for, the return, the damage, and the recall. Again, always making sure we have processes involved that line up with each of these. Distribution channel and strategic level, how we think about that. So the distribution channel should add value to the customer. We want to make sure that it lines up with how things are and where things need to be. So there are three. There's intensive, selective, and exclusive. So in intensive, we are supplying as many outlets as possible to penetrate as much market as possible. So, we're basically trying to flood the market so that as conveniently as possible, our target consumer can find this product anywhere they want to go. Just keep in mind that in doing that, you can do a small scale or a large scale, but the larger the scale that you do, the more capital that you're going to lock up. So do you really have the capital for that kind of inventory sitting in all those different channels, all those different points? So that's one thing to keep in mind. They're selective. So this is really more the customized shopping experience. We're selecting very specific locations. Only locations that are selected are really the ones that are going to be stocked. And this could be about your product. So, you're organic, you're X, Y, and Z. So you're only going to sell in a store that really curtails to that. You're running close. So instead of being at, Walmart and every place else, you're just going to be very select running uh, locations, the mom and pops or the more, exclusive. And on that note, so we do have exclusive. So this is like brand image. This is luxury. This is, it's the Tiffany's. It's where, you're only going to be selling, in this one shop, maybe in this huge area, but because this item is so exclusive or so wanted, people are willing to travel in order to get that one item. Distribution management. So again, the overall goal of distribution is just to make sure that we absolutely are getting the right product or the right service to the right person at the right time and the right place. So physical distribution should always align with the overall channel strategy. So, again, thinking if you're very heavy on distribution, but you have a fulfillment center for one-off orders for direct to customer, does it make sense that we're keeping that fulfillment center for direct to customer, or is that something that we need to be back in house in order to make sure that we're being as lean and mean and cost efficient on the distribution side as possible? So we also, on the distribution, manage the entire supply chain. So we talked about before. So it's everything from the raw materials inbound to the finished goods and how it gets to the consumer or the B2B. So we want to make sure, again, we're driving efficiencies from raw bound materials and parts to the outbound partials and finished goods. We're managing, tracking, getting good data on vendors, suppliers, packaging, inventory, warehousing, logistics, and point of sale. We're gathering all that information and we're sharing that information and the relevant information in order to identify the opportunity for growth and also for competitive positioning, market intelligence. So distribution, you're not all by yourself. We're working with marketing. We're making sure that we're working with customer service and sales so that all of this information is shared as much as possible in a very open environment. We want to make sure the costs are aligned to facilitate a product being sold at the right price. So you can have the greatest product in the entire world, but if it costs too much in order to produce, it's not going to go anywhere and it's not going to work for the company. So we want to make sure that, are the raw materials the right price? Are we having issues with quality, inbound, outbound that's driving up costs? What are those? We've got the data on it. We're attacking that specific data in order to understand why our costs are what they are. Again, we're aligning with customer service, marketing, sales, finance to ensure the product produced is actually selling. It's selling at the correct quality and specs that people want for that price. And we're ensuring that there's sufficient stock in the channels that we're managing well with promotions throughout. So again, within distribution, you want to make sure that we're communicating with marketing. If marketing is going to be doing a really big promotion, we really want to ensure that we know that and that we have the right inventory at the right place in order to align with that. So again, if it's through our distribution network that those stores are going to be selling, we want to make sure those distributors, have that inventory, we have it ready to go, and that communication is there and it's open. Distribution tips. So we're managing inventory levels and it's really a balancing act. So the less inventory you have, then the more capital that you have freed up for other things, but then you also risk having late orders or lost sales because of that. Having too much inventory, then we have the working capital tied up and we're not able to do those other projects. And if those items are slow sellers, we may have some problems down the line. We want to make sure that we're monitoring the quantity, quality of inbound raw materials, packaging and parts. So thinking about this, the doors have opened to the truck as it arrives at our facility. We want to make sure that before it leaves that truck, does it meet our quality? Because as soon as you pull that product off the truck, there's no way to go back to where you got it from and say, we didn't cause this issue. So always make sure that, the receiving department understands, take photographs, walk around everything real fast, make sure you're doing a very quick visual inspection before anything is taken off the truck. Photos of the product taken on the truck before anything is touched in order to document whatever issue may be having, damage, shifting, etc. And again, always ensuring that the proper outbound quantity. So again, we focus on the inbound. We want to make sure that the outbound has the same level of care. So it's the right quantity, it's the right packaging, the appearance, the paperwork, everything is correct. So we're definitely facilitating that through the communication that it's going to go to the right place. One good thing to kind of do is scorecards. Transportation scorecard is a really good one. So we want to make sure we're tracking on-time performance with carriers, inbound and outbound. We want to make sure that we're tracking the condition of the product when it arrives. So is there damage? Damage could have been caused in transit, could have been caused by our suppliers. Shifting, that would be where maybe the pallet tipped over. Why is that happening? Is it because of the way the pallet was stacked? Is it because of the way maybe the carrier was driving? We also want to keep in mind the cleanliness of the trailer. So if we're very B2B heavy, when that trailer arrives at the distributor or the retailer and they open the doors, if the trailer is really dirty, that reflects on us. It may have been dirty when it arrived to our facilities, but we really want to make sure that we're doing that extra step to make sure that there's no perception on our product. Because if they see dirty, they might think there's something wrong with the product. Michigan, if you have a lot of business up there, one thing to keep in mind is they have a massive, famous recycling. So in that, it includes glass. So a lot of, little glass shards can be on the trucks. They can bounce during transit up onto product, up onto boxes. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. You want to make sure that you have had the driver clean out the trailer. If the driver's not cleaning out the trailer, have your people do it really quickly just to make sure that one small little issue is not giving a perception that you've done something wrong, like broken glass or just dirt in general. Make sure we're getting feedback from, the receiving at the B2B side and the consumer as far as how did that go? How was it received? Internally, we will really want to make sure that we're working on open communication. So the more open that we are in general, the easier it is, one, for change, but two, to make sure that blind spots don't exist, or we're minimizing the number of blind spots. So make sure we have that culture of open communication. So we're resolving issues in a proactive way. Again, we have this transportation scorecard. It's a really good idea to keep an eye on the vendor and the supplier scorecards as well. So again, what is the on-time performance? How is the quality? What's the price like? And what's the availability? When we order, are we having problems with availability? Do we need to look at other suppliers, other vendors? On-time performance, is that the vendor or the supplier's issue, or do we have to have conversations with transportation in order to have that resolved? So talk so much about that. Now we kind of have to look at ourselves. So warehousing, production, one really important thing is understanding where we are. If we're producing, if we're warehousing in a certain area of the country, but our main market is somewhere else, why? Why are we producing here, but transporting, we're producing in Florida, but our main consumers are in California. How do we be as efficient as possible when we're looking at things like this in order to drive out, wasted transportation costs, et cetera? So if we're looking at new locations, keep that part in mind. If we have a location, then we look at the layout. So why is the layout what it is? Which brings us to the picking process. So again, we're taking a pallet to cases to the individual items. Are those workstations, are those products, is it laid out in such a way that we're able to empower employees to hit certain quotas on time? One tool to help us both with, layout, understanding picking and other processes is just making sure we understand, flow mapping. So literally draw a blueprint of your warehouse, of your production facility, of your facility, and how does the product flow? How does the foot traffic flow? Where are you having issues? Where is there wasted steps? Where is there wasted process? Where is there potential for, injury with crisscross of forklifts or people, et cetera? We also want to make sure we're standardizing process and roles. So empowering our employees to know the best way of doing something. So if we know the best way is X, Y, and Z, it's one thing to tell somebody one time. It's another thing to have that documented in a really easy to understand way and having that posted at each workstation for those team members so that we're empowering them for success. We've talked before for the reverse logistics, we want in advance in a proactive way to understand, how returns, how restocking, how damage, how recall may happen so that we're able to react in the absolute most thorough professional way at a time of crisis so that we're able to maintain as much of our brand image as possible if something, God forbid, went way wrong. We also want to make sure we're auditing. So it's inventory. How is our inventory going? Are we doing a good job as far as like the outbound? If you're using a lot of third-party providers, I personally have used one for, the fulfillment issue for online orders. And, they're great. They have a website. I log on. I can see that, these products all have inbound inventory. This is how many there are. But you really want to audit both yourself and the partners that you have within your supply chain, because there's nothing worse than finding out, well, why can't this be fulfilled? Well, I have 300 of this, but your records show that you have 100. How did this happen? You want to understand why these things happen. More importantly, you want to get that updated right away so that you don't have people coming in and you actually do have the success of a sale, but you actually don't have any inventory of it. So always making sure that you're auditing yourself and your supply chain network. One thing also not to forget about is that last mile. So communication is key. So we're informing them of the tracking. We're informing them when that order is going to get there. But is this something where, it's a subscription box when it opens that they want to have like, folded tissue paper? What is that last moment that we can actually bring joy or some surprise, or making sure that when it gets there, the customer is wowed, quality, et cetera. But what is that? So just don't forget that last mile aspect, whatever that means to your organization. It varies, but just don't forget that. And more importantly, never forget safety. So you've done a flow chart. You understand maybe what risks exist at each of the workstation of the areas where things crisscross. Make sure that you have that posted in those areas, and make sure you're training so that, for the safety, it's going to impact, efficiencies, but more importantly, it's going to impact your employees' well-being. And we want to make sure that we're absolutely stay on top of that to the best of our abilities. That leads us into implementing change. So we know that we have a process today. We know we need to do something. Change is a 4-letter word. There's no doubt about it, no way around it. So how do we help that? So we really want to make something, we want to take it from gut reactions or initial thoughts to really, what is the data saying? What is the real feedback? And allow actual data, actual events to drive that change. So we also want to clearly define what that change is going to be and align it with our business goals. And we have to ensure we understand who will be affected and how. One great example would be the CEO recently who had 900 people come on a Zoom call, let them all go. Not the best way to do change, not the best way to communicate. So we want to make sure that we have a defined communication strategy ahead of time as well. And we want to plan for obstacles. So is it like, I don't like change in general, or, is it a training issue? Is it technology? We're asking people to use computers now. We're asking people to use certain software. Plan for those obstacles and make sure that we're setting things up for them to succeed. So we're providing them with effective training. It's written, it's documented. So it's not just something that I verbally said something to you once, you should have remembered. No, we want to make sure that it's written, it's documented, and it's posted so people can find it, so that they can be as efficient as possible and not embarrassed to ask a question. We want to communicate as a team the reason, the cause, and the desired outcome of this change. And again, going back, we want to make sure we've implemented a supportive structure so that this change is good. But if you have questions on it, if you need help, this isn't something where we're going to yell. This isn't something we've documented how you can succeed, and we want you to succeed in this. And more importantly, we also want to track the data and review the process and analyze the results. We really want to think about, why we've done something, but we've done it. Now let's show that it actually worked or it didn't work, and we have the proof and it actually makes sense. So again, when we look at change, the key questions, so what do we need to change? Why is it required? What are the impacts of the change? Who's gonna be most affected by that? And how is that change going to be received or perceived? How will the change be communicated? And how will that feedback from the teams be managed? So you want to make sure that we're taking that feedback and we're using it. So we talked about sales in the beginning. Now we're talking about implementing change. We're selling internally. So again, what is important? What is the perspective of our buyer, the employee, for change? And making sure that we understand what that is so that we can action and verbalize why it's happening and why, it's not going to be bad. It's not going to be scary. It's not going to be whatever that block is. Some more key questions. What are the behaviors and skills that are required to achieve these business results, and how we're going to make sure that we give that to the employees. The training, the delivery method, what's going to be most effective and work to meet those employees' needs. Where is the support going to be? Where is it going to be required the most, and how we're going to be able to manage that? And what did the change actually bring? So again, like we talked, what did it achieve? Did it actually hit the goals? Did it actually hit the results? And what does that mean for our employees too? So it's one thing like, oh, great, the stock value went up, or this happened, or that happened. But what does it actually mean for me? Was the change managed successfully? So we really want to make sure that, we're auditing ourselves as far as like our process improvement, how did we roll this out? What can we do better? And, what can we do in order to be the best organization possible out there? And always having that open line of communication is really how we can embed change in our organization. So it's not like, no, 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 this is the way we've always done it. Always making sure that we have, open doors, open ears, and we're listening actively internally, just like we would with sales, is kind of how we can embed that culture of change, or at least that flexibility in our organization. Thank you.